Yeah.
To see that. Wow.
That was hard. Yeah. I remember, now. And one of the girls of my classmates, she had a dress which she had kind of outgrown, and she, on her own, somehow connected with a farmer, and she gave her dress for a bag of apples, But no, I never got an apple from her.
No kidding. Wow. She kept them all for herself?
More or less, maybe her roommates, every room had, depending on the size, 3, 4, 5 of the girls, Our room was originally a pension room with 2 beds, for a couple and so.
I see.
But by the window, they had 2 more beds. They were, what do you call them?
Bunk beds.
Bunk beds. Yeah, I slept in the other one, in the higher one, and Lydia slept under me in the lower one.
So 4 girls to a room.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had a sink, as I said, running water in our room, which was nice. Of course, the toilet was for every etage. There was one toilet in the hall, and you had to go there, So there was no...
Were you anxious to get back home?
Oh, yes.
So that... And how long were you in?
I was, let me think. I was a good half year, something.
And how old were you at that point? Was that?
At that point, I was 14.
Hmm. And then, sort of the circumstances of moving back to Munich. So what
No, that was
no.
way after the war, moving back to Munich.
46, 47.
I think it was... either 46 or 47, I forgot. No, in 47 I think I made my Abitur, so it must have been 46. Moving back to Munich in the summer.
And describe how life sort of was when you guys moved back.
In Munich?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my father, before he died, had bought our neighbor's property, or a good part, not all of it, but a good part of our neighbor's property, including his house, which was nothing like our house. It was just, run of the mill, and it was badly damaged during the air attacks. So, but my mother had this rebuilt, and that is the house we moved into.
Hmm.
And not only this, since there was such a shortage in housing, we had to take renters. That was the law, So we got a couple who then had a baby.
But this is not the Geiselgasterstraße house.
No.
This is, okay, still.
That was in the Zieg and the Landstraße. All that doesn't exist anymore. You wouldn't recognize it. I wouldn't. Okay. It's all gone. It's completely different. It's city now. There's our apartment houses where, Herr had his vegetables and potatoes and so on. No, it's completely gone. Completely different.
Do you mind if I ask sort of the circumstances of your father passing away?
Yeah. He never was drafted. Well, for one thing, probably his job would have been too important, but that was not the reason. He had angina pectoris, angina pectoris, which means
a heart condition of some sort.
A heart condition, a rather serious heart condition. And this I didn't know, but my mother, when she lived with us, in Wall, in her later years, and so she usually spent winters with us, like my mother-in-law. We had our grommies for years, for part of the year. And she wrote her memoirs, and I've never read them, but some time ago I kind of looked through them, you know, glancing here and there, and so there are some factual mistakes, you know, because probably her memory was not so good anymore, but I read some things which I just did not know, you know. You do not tell her that your children that. But he had a rather serious heart condition, and he always had medicine along with him in a pouch which I had made at school, you know, embroidery, I mean, a very simple type of embroidery for a simple, and so, but anyway, it was had been a gift from me to him, and that he used for his medicines to take with him in the car. Huh?
He held his medicine in this.
Yes.
Oh.
And she wrote that he must have realized that he was seriously sick, because for the last year or so he did not want to drive alone anymore. He was a very good driver. He never, you know, it's not that. But he wanted somebody to be with him in the car. And that was the reason that he probably realized that his condition was quite serious. And he did die on the road, yes. In the car with Herr Moore, who was our, how do you put it, you know, one of the, not workers, but higher, you know, he organizer, and so he and his brother worked for my father, among others. And Herr Moore was with him, and it was in one of the, not suburbs, but villages outside of Munich, on a country street. And, you know, my father was driving, Herr Moore couldn't even drive. And he was a very controlled man, you know, to control himself. And he had the foresight to pull the car up and put the brake on, you know, turn the motor off, put on the brake, and he only said one word, Luft, which means air. And he was dead. It was like that.
So he obviously felt, he had the, he felt it, and he had the fortitude to...
Yes, yes, and he must have known that something like this could be happened, because, you know, in the past he would have thought nothing of driving by himself. He was a very good driver, but he just didn't want to drive alone anymore. And that I knew from the memoirs of my mother. She wrote that down because I did not know that. Well, and then my mother was in charge of everything. With 3 children, the youngest, you know, still a baby, more or less.
And did the business survive? The business operated during the war?
Oh yes, we were a very important war business, because we made barracks for the army, for prisoners, for whatever. Yes.
I see.
Yes.
And then she continued the business after.
Yeah. She continued the business after. And she held it till my brother was around 26 and took over. And my brother, of course, you know, we were still going to school and so, and he went to school. He went then to the Polytechnic Institute, or whatever it's called now. It's the same school that my father went to become an architect and master builder, you know, and he went there too. And after that he worked several years, 4 or 5 years, for another outfit to gain experience, and then my mother took him into the business, and she still Herr Muck, her oldest and most competent of the workers, you know. That's another story. Mr. Muck, he had been a simple carpenter, and after my father's death, my mother chose him over another one, because Herr Moore, he intrigued against my mother together with one of the office people, with Herr Schütz, you know.
Really?
Their goal was to get the power, you know. They gave my mother a piece of paper to sign so that they would have the power to sign documents and so. But my mother was not dumb. My mother was a smart woman. No, she would not do it. And she got rid of Herr Schütz, who later managed to get into another outfit. I don't know whether it was a carpentry, some related business. Got the, you know, power to do everything and so, and went bankrupt with that. And of course made a lot of money on the widow. And the same thing would have happened to my mother. Yeah, but my mother was a smart and very strong woman. No. She just dismissed him and so. So she chose her Muck, who was a simple carpenter, but he had risen through the ranks as, you know, so to speak, a upper echelon carpenter or whatever. And he only had gone to elementary school. He had no higher education whatsoever. And to his eternal credit, he was already around 50 or something. He went to school, evening school, for 2 years, you know, to get the, the education he needed, to get a certain certificate, so that my mother and, you know, had somebody technically
qualified,
certified, yeah. Otherwise, she could not have done or applied even to do certain projects. But our outfit did, for instance, whole roof construction on the Rathaus in Munich after it was destroyed by bombs, not the Rathaus but the roof and so on, and other very important jobs, and that was only possible if there was somebody with a certain diploma, you know, the German system. Right. I mean, yeah. And he still assisted my brother till he retired.
Well, so he was obviously very trustworthy.
Yes,
and reliable.
He was trustworthy, he was smart, he was a good man, he rose through the ranks. And my mother chose the right man. He personally, his wife had multiple sclerosis and died. You know.
And he retired from your firm?
Yeah, eventually he did retire from our firm.
Oh. And it might be interesting to hear sort of the family tree, both on your father's and your mother's side. You've mentioned a number of people, some aunts. You've mentioned Helena, I believe.
That was the name of my grandmother,
and
my aunt Hella. Her name was also Helene.
But could you sort of like fill out if you can recall?
Well, on my father's side, the male side, goes back to Czechoslovakia, to the Sudetenland, which was the German settled part of Czechoslovakia near the Saxonian border. They are from a little village, Dittersbach. I don't know what the Czech name of Dittersbach is. It's between Bodenbach and Tetschen, and the Czech names for those two cities are Tietchin, Podmokli. That's one. Okay. I was there with Claudia. That was our Czech.
Okay, so you visited that area. You visited that area.
Yes, we visited that area.
And Bach, if I recall correctly, it means brook, stream.
Yes, that's true. Bach means stream. Or little
so there must be many streams there.
Yeah, but what we really wanted, unfortunately, we came there on a Saturday, and that was still when Czechoslovakia was under communist rule, more or less. And the parsonage was not open on Saturday, because that's a place where you would go to look into the church books, you know, for your ancestors. But that was not possible. We were there on a Saturday and a Sunday, and it was closed.
Can I interrupt just a second?
Sure.
My battery is about to run out.
Oh.
And what I want to do is
talking too long.
No. Actually, and we've actually been talking for quite a while. I want to get my power cord. So. Does not have an outlet. Very strange. It's very strange. They don't have a spare outlet there. Here.
Yeah. Better ask Piero before
No, I'm not unplugging anything.
Oh.
This is not going to work.
Shall I get up?
No, the issue is that there is no available power outlet. We might need to take a break.
Okay.
And then we can go back and start with the story of that you went to look for your ancestors in the...
Yeah, snack it, I did.
Okay. I'm not sure how much time I have left here. That's flashing a battery at me. So.
Oh, okay.
So why don't we actually... All right, so whenever you're ready, you can go back to... You and Schnacki visited...
About my father's family. Well, my father's family lived in that area for a long time, and actually the record is not continuous, but some parts go back to before the 30 Years' War, which is very rare in Europe, because the 30 Years' War was an incredible upheaval, you know. Where not only, I think, half of the population or more were killed and so, but, you know, churches were burned, the books were burned. It was also horrible, and so it is fairly... it is not very often that you could follow up a family history to before the 30 Years' War. But in my father family's case, there is some interruption, but there is one record which goes back to before 1618, which is before the 30 Years' War. There is one mention of some Heinrich.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So because typically the churches were burned, the records were burned.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was an incredible upheaval, and whole villages, everybody was dead. You know, there was nobody to
remember anything.
To remember or to know where records were or to know what had happened. Or no, as the 30 Years' War was devastating in Germany. Of course, it was fought in other countries too, but Germany is the center of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And Germany was really destroyed in the 30 Years' War. You know? But this family has a mention somewhere, and before the 30 Years' War, There's a family, Heinrich, somewhere. And these were my father's ancestors.
And I was in sort of thinking in more recent generations. Did your father have siblings? Do you know?
Yeah, he had 2 siblings, a brother and a sister. The sister died at 18 from tuberculosis. My mother told me that he was very attached to his sister, but she died at a young age. And his brother was Schreiner Onkel Karl, who also lived in the same part of Munich, and we knew him and his wife, Tante Sophie, quite well. We knew our 2 cousins, and as a matter of fact, I was in touch with his widow because he died even after we had emigrated to America. I used to visit her, and also she had 2 sons, and I tried to stay in touch with the 2 sons, but it broke off, not through me, but they just didn't write anymore or drifted away, but they were invited to our family reunions and so. And Tante Sophie, his wife, was very nice, and also Uncle Karl was very nice to us. He's the one who taught me city biking. Because as a child, for my 10th birthday, I got my first bike. I could bike by them. I had learned it on the bike of our cook, Johanna. She had a bike to go shopping, and I just borrowed it, and on the slope in our carpentry, so it was just the right spot to learn how to bike. So I could bike when I was 10, but I got my own bike. And my father asked his brother, who had the cabinet maker section that was his own, but on my father's property, to, essentially to bike to the town with me, or through the town, not through the inner city, but, traffic, and teach me how to bike, because none of my parents had a bike. My mother didn't know how to bike at that time.
And so what is there specifically that you had to learn?
Well, how to behave in city traffic.
I see.
Because our driveway, was a long driveway, but there was no traffic. It was just our carpentry, our property. So, how what to watch out for and all that. And he did. He biked once or twice with me and explained to me, what to watch out for and things. Yes.
And did you know your grandparents on your father's side at all?
No. He was an orphan when he was 12. And it's a kind of tragic story. What I know about his parents, or also much about his family, is only from my great uncle Karl, Professor Uncle Karl. He was my father's uncle. And there are some stories with his family too, As the one who emigrated from Czechoslovakia, from Dittersbach, he was my father's grandfather, I think. And was hat gelernt? He was apprenticed by, I don't remember what he had learned. He had learned some trade. And when he had passed his apprenticeship exam, he came home, where he lived with his parents and his older brother, and lay down on the sofa. And I mean, that is a story I've heard from my great uncle. I cannot vouch for its truth or anything.
Okay.
It's just a family story. And his older brother came in, and with the right of an older brother, threw him off the sofa and laid down himself. And that so much irked him that he decided to leave home, which he did. And for a year or 2 or 3 years, I don't know. And that was fairly customary in those times for a young man to go auf Wanderschaft, to wander into the world and see the world, before settling down
Mhm.
and, founding a family and choose whatever he would be doing for the rest of his life and all that. So he did wander around. And I think my granduncle told me he also fought in that war between Austria and Italy, on the Austrian side, of course. And so for several years, it seems, he just wandered around. And eventually he came to Bavaria, Upper Bavaria, and settled down in Penzberg, which is a small town in Upper Bavaria. My brother has been there to look at the house or whatever is still there. And as a matter of fact, I have a cousin whose wife, who is not blood related to us, but she's very nice, and she is into ancestor research. She not only researched her family, her mother, grandmother's side and so, but she also did some research on that and collected whatever information there is around. And she is the authority on it. That's wife of Karl-Heinz Redberg, who died this year in the spring. Karl-Heinz died this spring, and his widow is the one who is interested in the family history.
And this was it was the grandfather of your father?
Yeah, my father's grandfather is the one.
And so he's the first one who came to Bavaria
Mm-hmm.
from Czechoslovakia.
And he married somebody called Katharina Held, and she is from the Ries, from a certain section in South Germany, I would say about northwest of Munich. I think I've biked through that area once on the way to Frankfurt or Darmstadt. There is an area called the Ries, and to the best of my knowledge, I would have to look it up and talk to, Karl-Heinz's wife, and so she was from there. And they settled in Penzberg, and I think he opened a dairy shop, milk, rather something like that. Or was that his son? Well, in any case, the family saga goes, and I know that from my professor, Uncle Karl, who knew these things and who told me most of these things. Katharina Held had 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls. And she was Protestant, I think, and this Heinrich guy was Catholic. And when the children were born, a decision had to be made as to the face. And now I forgot, he was not sure himself. It was either that all the boys were baptized Protestant and all the girls Catholic. It was either this, or it was one child Protestant, one child Catholic, just like that. He did not remember that clearly, Uncle Karl, Professor Uncle Karl. I had 2 Uncle Karls. Uncle Karl was my father's brother, but he was Schreiner Uncle Karl, which means cabinet maker Uncle Karl, and his uncle, my father's uncle, was Professor Uncle Karl, because he was a professor at the Munich Polytechnicum, where my father and also Günthersen started to become an architect and building engineer and so on. And I was close to Professor Uncle Karl. He also was, after my father's death, our warden, so to speak, because in the Third Reich, till, I would not say so recently, but till time after the war, the law was that if your father died, your mother did not automatically become the guardian, because she was a woman. A woman could not become guardian of her own children. It had to be a man.
So, one of the uncles, potentially?
Well, my father's uncle, became the guardian. Fortunately, this uncle, Professor Uncle Carl,
Mhm.
and my mother were very fond of each other, always had gotten along very well, respected each other, and this grand uncle gave my mother full rein, you know. She did not have to ask him this or that, and so he knew her, he trusted her. She was a smart, educated woman, but it was the law. You had to choose a guardian, a male guardian, and he was our guardian
Mhm.
for us 3 kids
And throughout until you were
until I was of age. Yeah,
of age.
Yeah.
Mhm.
that was the law.
That's interesting. I never knew that.
Well, many people don't know that, but that was, you know, it was a male-dominated world at that time, still, even after the war.
Mhm.